Hi everyone, so I'm back with the videos now, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for following me and checking the videos out, and some of your comments as well. They're much appreciated. So I'll just give you a little bit of background about myself for those of you that this might be the first time that you're watching one of my videos. So my name is Hector, and I produce under the alias of Hectagon with a K, and I am a specialized music production with Ableton Live. Especially drum and bass, but also create bass house, house, techno, and also lo-fi hip-hop. So I'm familiarized with all these styles of music. So I've been teaching Ableton Live for a very well-known school, and I have been dealing with the students from around the world, and I decided to kind of like share my knowledge as well on YouTube, and I hope you all guys will find it beneficial. The way I'm doing my videos as well is I want to make sure that I give you something, or I provide something that potentially could change the way you produce in one way or another. And and obviously, you know, like you'll find my contact details if you want to reach out to me. That'd be fantastic. And so on this week's topic, what I'm going to be talking about is a little bit like resynthesizing drums, and how, for example, using some of the Ableton effects, we can create very interesting sort of abstract layers for the drums that we work with. So there's so many different things that we can do with effects that can really reshape and actually add a lot of character to your music. So as you can see in this project, I've got a kick, snare, hi-hat is kind of drum and bass. I'll start just by showing you a little bit on what I've done with operators. Operator is one of my favorite synths in Ableton. It's actually extremely versatile. You can do quite a lot with just literally one carrier and one modulator if you want to add a little bit of flavor. For those of you that don't know about FM, don't worry, at one point I will create another video where I'm talking about FM in a lot of detail. But this is sort of like the baseline I've got going. Don't forget as well that you can use the shaper effect as well. It can be really creative as a way to sort of introduce movement on the sound. Not only that, but also can provide a little bit of jitter, so a little bit of randomness that could add a little bit of flavor to the sound. So you can kind of see here, I'm controlling the level. Obviously I haven't triggered it yet, but you can see that there's a little bit of movement on the level there. And I also automated the core settings and the fine tuning to create a little bit of beating and movement. So let's have a listen to what the bass line sounds like on its own. You can hear that. We can increase the tone to kind of give it a little bit more brightness. There you go, that's cool. I haven't added any effects. One of my favorite effects in Ableton is raw, as you can see here. So raw can be really powerful. Just to add a little bit of crunch. I feel this is a little bit much. I'm just gonna go into, maybe not that one. Let's go into something a little bit softer. Yeah, that's better. It really accentuates the low end. You can kind of hear it, right? Right, so let me just also, let's add a little bit of crunch. I do love the noise shaper here. It's really cool. It's a little bit of noise on the sound. Anyway, so let's zoom out. Let's have a listen to what I mean by the drums. So here I've got a kick, a hi-hat, and a snare, right? So the hi-hat is here. Of course, I haven't added any dimension effects. I can add dimension to the sounds as well, but at the moment they're kind of basic but interesting. So this is my kick and this is my snare. So if I take that was a snare before. That was a kick before. And that's the snare after. Let's focus on, for example, what we can do to a kick sound. So I'm just going to delete this chain that I created just to show you some things that we can do with some of the Ableton effects. Two things that can be really creative. Obviously, I know that many of you are using drum bass. Drum bass is great in order to add a little bit of crunch, but chord bass is also really interesting as well, as a way to kind of like add a little bit of like sound manipulation to the sound. In terms of like adding extra harmonics and extra fullness, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to introduce the membrane, which, as you know, the membrane emulates the behavior of like a drum head, and set the quality to high. I mean, I don't know, I just feel like, you know, I want to play with all the harmonics. And then we can have a listen to it. I'm just going to put 100%. Obviously that doesn't sound anything like a kick at the moment, but let's just let's solo for a minute. Let's play around with the tuning. And of course that's, you know, it's quite long, so let's just play around with the material. That's kind of the tightness. And that's the decay. And I'm going to make sure this is not in stereo. I'm going to make the width 0%, so it's mono. That's the kick. That's quite nice. Look, it just adds a little bit of extra fullness. You can hear that, right? We can, of course, play around with the ratio just to kind of change the size. And the harmonics, kind of make it sound maybe a little bit cleaner, a little bit more metallic. So that can add, as you can see, that can add a little bit of extra punch to the drums, especially to something like a kick. The other thing that can be really creative too is using something like a vocoder. It can also work really well as a way to shape the kick and potentially kind of enhance it. And the way to enhance a kick with using a vocoder is by, for example, using the noise here, right? So you can see that we got this noise carrier. Let me just zoom out a little bit. There we go. So the noise carrier, basically what it adds is just basically takes noise and passes that noise through the amplitude of the kick, right? So the movement on the kick drum is going to affect the noise as well. And this is what it sounds like at the moment. This is 40 bands. That's cool. We might not need so much of the low end. I'm just gonna narrow it a little bit. So it adds a little bit of high end energy in there. And we can, the other thing that's really interesting is that we can gate the sound. And we can also play around with the release. So you can see it's only adding a little bit of a transient just at the start. You see? So that can be really nice. And what we can also do is here we got this voice, which is basically like a pure noise generator that we can add. So it sounds a little bit fuller. That's quite nice. Potentially, let's open up the range a little bit more. Let's open the bandwidth, which is basically the width. You can see that we're dividing the range of frequencies that we've got here in 40 bands, so we can make them wider, so it sounds maybe a little bit more natural. And here we got formant, but let's have a listen to that. Let's just blend it, right? There we go. You see, it adds the clicky part of the kick, which I think is really, really important. And of course, we can play around with the release here. Obviously, that could become a snare, right? If you want it. But we can also shorten it and tighten it up. Play around with that, and then we can play around with the formant as well. The formant can be really creative as a way to kind of shift the tonality of that noise higher in the spectrum or lower. I feel a little bit in this case is enough, and then of course we can blend it in, right? So that can be really cool. And the other aspect as well I tend to do for drum sounds is I tend to add a transient shaper. And it's by a company called Kilohertz. I absolutely love this company. They make really amazing effects, and actually they're free. So yeah, I'll probably leave a link for those as well for you guys to download it, just because the transient shaper is just so good. So let's have a listen to what could happen to this kick drum. So the attack basically enhances the attack portion of the sound. The sustain basically tightens it up, so less sustain is going to make it sound tighter, and the pump up is kind of like a gate, kind of like the decay, I would say. Right, so let's just play around with it, and the speed obviously is how quickly the transient shaper reacts to the sound. So you can get it super clicky if you want it. And I'm going to add a little bit of clip as well, just so the signal doesn't go above 0 dBs. And I'm just going to bring the gain down on the channel here. Okay, let's add a little bit of attack. That's nice and punchy, right? You can hear the punch coming through. And potentially, if I wanted, I mean, I don't know. I think that sounds good. I could add a little bit more decay on the on corpus. I quite like it like that, and then we can tighten it up if we want it. But I'm happy with that. And then potentially we can always add an EQ to reshape it farther up, because, you know, it's worth having a look at what's going on with the kick drum anyway. Potentially I will make this a little bit lower. So let's just dial it down here in the tune. Yeah, that sounds good. Let's tighten it up even more. Yeah, that's good. So you can hear the difference it really makes to the kick. Let's have a listen to what the kick sounded like before. So let's just group these effects and turn them all off. And that's the new kick. And you can hear it's got a little bit of life to it because we are introducing a little bit of noise. Maybe the noise is a little bit too obvious. Potentially make it a little bit shorter. Maybe less of it. I think that's kind of like a right balance. And then of course we can use the EQ to kind of reshape it. Maybe add a little bit more. A little bit more punch, and obviously turn the gain down so we avoid clipping. There you go, right? So we reshaped that kick drum by using effects. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea. And of course, if you want to take it further, you can create your own audio effect rack, which is what I've done here with macro mappings. And then you can definitely use that later on. And then you can see I'm using the same kind of chains, right? So this is another thing that can be really useful. And the same thing could apply as well for something like a snare. Okay, so for a snare sound, we can't do the same kind of things, right? Like potentially, I mean, let's maybe copy the chain I created here, which I grouped already, right? And let's paste it on the snare, right? Because I've already done the work, right? But all I have to do is just change the settings. In fact, let's just turn them off. This is another thing that we could do. Just turn them all off. Let's start from the first one. That's the snare. That's the snare by itself. Let's add a little bit more of this low end. Let's have a play around with the gain. That's cool, but let's make it a little bit fat. I think for a snare sound it's a bit too low. Let's just make it, let's just go and make it a little bit higher in the tuning. I quite like that actually. Let's bring it down. Yeah, that's quite nice actually. Let's play around with the material. That's nice and tight. Turn it off. Yeah, a bit thin and weak. A little bit more power, right? You can see that the corpus can really enhance it. It's huge. And then the other thing that we can do is, well, I've got a vocoder. If I do it in series, I don't have control. You see, that's sounding nice, but I want to have kind of like separate control over the noise or the tail of the snare and the truncing of the snare, right? The punch. So what I'm going to do here is just going to go over to the audio effect rack and just set it this way so I can take the vocoder and just add it so they're running kind of like in parallel like this. So now what I've got is I've got the noisy part. And one thing that can be really, really, really useful is adding a delay just in front of the noise. So you got like the truncing of the snare first and then the tail of the snare. So you get the punch and then the tail afterwards. So you can add a delay just to give it a little bit. Maybe not, yeah, that's this delay actually. Let's just put it on times, milliseconds. And let's line them up together. Obviously no feedback. We don't want any feedback. We don't want any coloration, nothing. It's just basically be using this as a kind of like a delay control. Let's hear them together. Let's shift it to the right. There you go, sounds quite nice. Let's turn that off. There you go, you get a really lovely snare sound now, right? And of course we can increase the release here. The range here is, I don't know, I'll set it up that way, but we can of course play around with it. Let's maybe like, yeah, let's play around with this for a bit. Yeah, I want to kind of keep it, I'm going to put 100% wet in there. And then I'm just going to use this to mix it. That's cool. That's pretty cool. Let's open it up a little bit. Hopefully I'm not clipping. My apologies if I am. No, that should be all right. So this can be really, really cool. And then of course I can add a shaper, as I mentioned before, right? So I already got it here. Transient shaper, and just add a little bit of flavor to the sound. Clipping. There you go. That's super tight. That's a super tight snare. Let's have a listen to that now. Obviously, you know, I have to turn on my my chain because I just turned it off with a kick. There you go. That's better, isn't it? That's cool. Let's have a listen to the whole thing. Let's play it with that. Cool. Awesome. Alrighty guys, so I hope you enjoyed this video. This is just a quick I just wanted to quickly show you what's actually possible within Ableton and some of the things that we can do for advanced sound design. Obviously that's catered for drum bass, but hopefully you can see that some of the Ableton effects can lead to really cool unexpected results, and it can really enhance the sounds and completely and drastically change them. So it's a bit like re-synthesizing acoustic sounds and adding them a little bit of an electronic feel to them. And obviously because we add in something like white noise, the white noise will add a little bit of extra character and movement. So anyway, there's a little secret that I thought I'd share with you, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave us a comment if you can. Obviously, yeah, drop a like as well if you like the video, and subscribe as always. And yeah, until the next one, enjoy, and we'll catch up very soon.